I saw your tweet thread about the affirmative action decision, and basically you were against the decision. And I was hoping maybe you could just walk us through the philosophy there.
Yeah, and I understand why people, differ about that with me, and a lot of the people who have supported me on other issues would be disappointed by that. But, listen, I grew up in a state that was a Jim Crow state. So when I grew up in Virginia, it was illegal at that time for a black man to marry a white woman. Every aspect of life was governed by considerations of race. You were identified by black on your birth certificate. You were raised in a black neighborhood. You attended black segregated schools. Transportation, public parks, everything, every aspect. You were identified by race on your death certificate and buried in a black cemetery. I had a guy. There was a guy who worked for my family, and from when I was young, I was going hunting and trapping hawks down in the southern part of Virginia, and he would carry me on those trips. And he had been a World War II vet. He was in the Seabees. He was 6'5", incredibly smart. And when we stopped in restaurants, I would have to go in and buy the food and bring it out so that the two of us could eat it in the car. He asked me one day to accompany him into the local shoe store because he was not allowed in the shoe store. I had to buy the shoes from him, bring them outside, and he had to try them on the curb. So, my family was, deeply involved in the civil rights movement, and a lot of people look at affirmative action and say, well, it's been 150 years since the Civil War. Black Americans have had time to recover. But I was. I saw what it was like to be black when I was a kid. I saw that, that all of those higher levels of society were forbidden, right, in my lifetime. And my family was deeply involved in ending that system of Jim Crow. And part of that process was doing something that normally I wouldn't believe in, which is allowing, considerations of race to affect the judgments about who gets these, positions in colleges. But I also know, Dave, that almost all of those colleges already have went there, and so it's much easier for me to get in. But all of those legacies, and also the offspring of faculty, are given preferences. And if you look at a pie chart for who's in, almost none of those kids are black. So this is kind of a way of counterbalancing that, and it's not, believe me, I have a lot of problems with it too. And let me tell you what the problems are that I see with affirmative action. Is one, it's just contrary to American values that, that we're a meritocracy. It's an illusion, though, as I say, that we're a meritocracy, because there are all these built-in biases and preferences. But also, I think that the bigger problem is what Barack Obama called, the subtle bigotry of low expectations, that, people, a black kid in a college, in a good college, that people are looking at that kid and saying, oh, he got in here because he got a preference. And I don't think that's good for America either. So I understand that I think the Supreme Court has made a decision. That debate is now over about affirmative action. We're moving on, and we're going to, try to preserve the beachhead that black Americans got during that period in faculty positions, in business positions, et cetera. But for me, I would say that we probably should have kept it in place for a few more years, but, it's over now.
Right. I get the intentions. Just one more on that. What would you say in that case to the kid, the say 16 or 17-year-old Asian kid who, scored perfect on his SATs and had all A's, and he knows he's not getting into Harvard because someone with significantly less grades is going to get in. No one gave that Asian kid anything. He might be second American from South Korea and his parents owned a bodega. That was a lot of kids that I grew up around. I mean, what do you say to that kid? I think that's what the nugget really comes down to here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's not an easy position on any side to take, but as far as that Asian kid goes, there's kids getting into that college because they're good at sports, who don't have that kind of academic discipline or academic performance record. So there's all kinds of biases that get certain people in, it's not a straight meritocracy. There's no college. There are very few colleges in this country. I'm not going to say no. That just look at your GPA and your test scores and say that the top 3,000 kids with the best test scores in the country are the kids that are going to get into this college. All the decisions are dripping with bias of one kind or another. So, and unfortunately, the bias, these studies show that the biases tend to reflect the racial composition of the admissions department. That people tend to favor people who look like them and give them a preference. And, a lot of the admissions departments didn't have black people in them. And so, that's, it's not an easy question, Dave. It's not one that I would, it's one that's inconsistent with a lot of my other values and ideas about the country. But, because of my background I land on that side.